See, I knew it would. I knew it would come back to bite him. True, they kind of led into the plot of this episode with the cliffhanger at the end of last week's episode. But yeah, as soon as they pulled out that contrived plot line, of how Roy has to stay away from Thea to protect her, I was like, come on, come on. When has that ever worked? When has that ever stuck? When has that ever produced any kind of desirable results? Sure enough, Thea is abducted by Slade at the beginning of this episode, and this whole time when all the characters are grieving and Oliver is looking all pissed off, and his team is constantly trying to get her back, I'm just thinking to myself, you know, Slade didn't really do anything extraordinarily clever or in the realm of outsmarting you. He just took advantage of the opportunity that you presented to him. So, yeah, from where I'm standing, this is pretty much entirely your fault, or mostly your fault, because honestly, what do you think he was going to do? What did you think was going to happen, you idiot? But wow, this episode, I know I sound like a broken record. I sound like a broken record so much that I sound like a broken record in saying that I sound like a broken record. But this episode really, there was a lot going on in this episode. A lot of big steps, and for several of them, there is definitely no going back. Some of them, they could find a way to restore things back to status quo, but for the most part, it would be very difficult to write their way out of some of these revelations. But first of all, kudos to Manu Bennett again proving that he is without a doubt the best villain on this show. He is, from the moment that he showed up in season 1, I was like, oh my god, it's Crixus from Spartacus. From the moment he showed up as Slade Wilson, the man who would eventually become Deathstroke the Terminator, and seeing how he was cast, he was being played by Crixus from Spartacus and Azog from The Hobbit. I said to myself, okay, this is my new favorite character. And he still is. He still is. He is such... Not only does he have a menacing presence, but he has basically done everything that he has promised to do. He promised to put Oliver in a state of despair and take away everything that he holds precious to him. He's well on the way to that. Eventually, they're going to have to. Eventually, they might have to kill this character off, or at least find some way for the Green Arrow to defeat him. That's going to be a sad day. I'm sorry, because when you have a villain that's this good, and I'm not just talking about. And I'm not just saying that because I really like the actor. I'm just saying that in terms of how well the role was cast, how well it's being written, how well they have set him up as this former friend turned brilliant enemy. I mean, people are talking. This episode was about Slade making his first big move against Oliver, and yeah, it wasn't just one move, it was several moves. It's going to take a lot for Oliver to recover from this. Oliver and those around him. But first of all, the acting was stellar this episode. this episode was the best one since The Promise, the one where Slade invaded Oliver's home. Here he's actually showing his true colors a bit more. I say a bit more because at the end of the episode there's a warrant for his arrest. But it was good to see the team, Oliver's team, working together some more and coordinating as a group against Slade Wilson. It didn't work because he outsmarted them. But again, when after Roy and Sarah joined the team, the writers somehow found a way to keep from showing the entire group in action for a few episodes. So like I said, seeing them coordinate, even though this is like the third time it's been done, is still something that's fresh and new. Now, whether or not it's going to continue to be fresh and new, I don't know. Something tells me it is, because look at how long they kept the Oliver Diggle thing going. They kept that going for half a season, and that really wasn't getting all that tired when they introduced Felicity into the mix. And Felicity added a really fun new dynamic. And that was far from getting tired when they introduced Sarah into the mix, and then Roy, which I think Roy they introduced as a part of the team partially due to fan impatience, because right when Roy Harper showed up, legions of comic book fans were like, okay, when is he going to become Speedy? When is that going to happen? Because we all know it's coming. Although after this episode, they go back to teasing you, because Roy makes a big decision this time around. When they're getting on his case for pointing out what I was pointing out in terms of Oliver's stupidity, I was like, okay, this guy doesn't really seem all that crazy. Maybe you should listen to him. Maybe you should, because when they're all just sitting around waiting for Oliver, he's like, what are you guys doing? Come on, you can't do anything when King Queen is not commanding his forces. He didn't say it quite as nicely as that, but that's generally the statement he was trying to make. That's generally the question he was asking. So when he was saying this is Oliver's fault, the way that they kind of had him play it, it seemed kind of petulant at first, but once I actually got a chance to digest the lines, I was like, yeah, he's raising some good points. Oh my god, at least they acknowledge Oliver's stupidity at the end of this episode. He comes to terms with the fact that he has made wrong choices. He has come to terms with the fact that he was so preoccupied with catching Slade that he basically neglected everything else. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from there, now that he's kind of acknowledged his own weakness, acknowledged that quote, he is his own worst enemy. So whether he makes those mistakes again, I don't know. I mean, he's only human, so he could improve, or he could just go right back to messing up. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about Slade Wilson and how they kind of portray him here. They kind of do this. It's not really a dual personality. It's kind of like a hallucination. He sees a hallucination of Shadow, who is basically telling him what to do. Now, when I first saw this come up, I said to myself, this seems to kind of diminish his character a little. This seems to kind of diminish his willpower because this basically reduces him to a lackey. Now, a lackey to his own subconscious, but a lackey nonetheless. But luckily they don't go too far with it. It's only a few scenes, and it's just so you don't forget his motivation. I think that's primarily why they chose to include these visions of shadow that only he could see. Granted, it could be an excuse to keep Selena Jade on the show a little longer, which I guess that's always nice, but I think there's only so far they can take this. I think they're, as much as they hate to let go of one of their main cast members, I don't see them being able to. I don't see this particular plot point lasting very long and not getting old, because they don't really do anything new with it aside from her saying a line of dialogue and then him repeating the line of dialogue to whatever other characters are in the room. So unless they do something new with it, I don't really see them going with that route for much longer. But from here on out, there are going to be spoilers. So if you want my general review of the episode, it was very good. It was very good. Like I said, best episode since The Promise. Any episode where we deal with the character of Slade Wilson is welcome. And wow, does this ramp up some of the character relationships? It even ramps up some of the setup. I mean, despite the fact that they said that this would be kind of this finale or this big confrontation with Slade Wilson, they kind of do that because there are several scenes between Slade and Oliver, but they don't ever square off. It's not Green Arrow versus Slade Wilson. They kind of tease you with that, but then they pull the rug out from under you towards the end. But from here on out, there are going to be spoilers. Now, it would have been so easy for Slade, upon making the promise to take away everything that Oliver holds dear, it would have been so easy for him to just try to kill people like his sister, his mother, his teammates, Laurel. It would have been so easy for them to go that route. But once again, proving how fresh a villain that this is, they opt for a more psychological route, and in addition, rendering him basically socially powerless, against some of these issues that are being raised in his life as Oliver Queen, and also powerless as a businessman. The twist with Isabelle Rochev, played once again by Summer Glau. Now this episode actually addressed something that me and some other fans have kind of questioned, in that how has Oliver been handling not going to work? I mean, he is the CEO of Queen Consolidated, and he's, as far as we've seen, he has been completely absent. So not only do they explain that in that Isabelle Rochev being this partner basically covers for him at meetings and speaks for him at meetings and basically picks up the slack. Not only do they explain that, but also they explain why Isabelle Rochev was so quick to be won over after the Russia thing. She is secretly an agent for Slade. Now, I did not see this coming. I have to admit, this really was a genuine what a twist moment. She is secretly an agent for Slade, planted there, and not only was she intended to draw Oliver back from the island, because if you remember, he went back to the island after the season 1 finale. So Slade planted Isabel in the company to basically draw him back, but also seizing his company like that. What? Another one of these really stupid decisions that he made, handing over his company to a person who, until a few months ago, was a complete stranger. I guess it was the bed talking. I guess it was that what happens in Russia stays in Russia thing. But yeah, that will be interesting to see if he ever does recover, to see how his life is affected by having his company essentially taken away from him without any kind of resistance. He makes her temporary CEO, and that gives her enough authority to call an emergency meeting. And since he has been absent for months, that was enough for the fellow board members to see that, okay, this guy clearly does not have any kind of leadership skills. We should hand over the company to Isabel Rochev, who has been here and has been doing essentially double duty. Really clever move, really nice twist. I like how they tied that in with Slade's vendetta against Oliver. And not only that, there were a few character revelations. There were a few revelations that he made to some of the characters, because as we later learn, kidnapping Thea was a diversion. Not only was it a diversion to draw the Arrow off the streets, so that Slade could recruit some prisoners, a la Dark Knight Rises, where Bane storms Blackgate and he's like, "Step forward, those who would serve." But also it was a chance to completely destroy Thea's relationship with Oliver. And at the end of the episode, this cliffhanger that just killed me. This sealed the deal for this being a really awesome episode. This cliffhanger where Slade Wilson comes to Laurel's apartment and basically says, Oliver Queen is the Arrow. Yeah, I just thought I'd blow the whistle on him. And that's where the episode ends. And I'm just thinking, wow. They were teasing us for half the episode about him possibly having told Thea his secret about him being this vigilante. But in the end, once again, they pull the rug out from under you with this twist. He didn't tell her about the Arrow. He told her about Malcolm Merlyn being her biological father. No, he saved the Arrow thing for Laurel. Wow. This guy knows when to play his cards. At least thus far. I mean, does that Mirakuru also amplify the brain? At least long term, because Roy doesn't seem any smarter. But Roy leaving the city, that was I will say this, it was kind of rushed, because it was kind of, I mean, his falling out with Oliver and the rest of the team, it did seem kind of rushed, and I guess you could chalk it up to the Mirakuru impacting his anger and stress over Thea being kidnapped. But I don't really think that particular plotline got as much development as it probably deserved, because this is Roy Harper, Speedy from the comics, the Red Arrow from the comics, essentially leaving Starling City, or at least that's what the ending implied when we saw his car driving away, now leaving Starling City. So I don't know if he's gone for a little while, if he might come back later, maybe next season, I don't know. But yeah, there were some major blows to Oliver emotionally this episode, and Stephen Amell and those around him played that pretty convincingly. You can just tell that Slade out there basically taking away the relationships with those he loves is just completely destroying him. Um, one more thing, when they were kind of setting up that Oliver and Moira would have this kind of reconciliation, I was like, come on, really? Are they really gonna do this? Are they really gonna go for the "I forgive you" route? But thankfully, they do leave it kind of ambiguous, because all that happens is that they take temporary comfort in each other's company when they are both at a complete loss as to where Thea is. Is she still alive? So it seemed like a real genuine heartfelt little moment, and that's all it is. So we are left completely in the dark as to whether or not things are things are cool between them. So hopefully that'll be something that they clarify in the next episode. Hopefully there are a lot of things they clarify in the next episode, but overall I really enjoyed this one. Um, the next one, just based on the preview, seems to be a little chaotic. Um, the island thing, I didn't think was entirely necessary. I didn't think the island thing tied in all that much, at least in terms of plot, to the present day stuff, or at least not in terms of its psychological impact on Oliver, because Oliver he barely said anything in the island segments. He was basically a hostage in a prisoner exchange. So I don't really think the island stuff tied in as well. But overall, everything else was great. The action was great. The drama was great. The acting was great. Overall, this was a very strong episode that in my opinion, more than made up for the last few episodes that, in my opinion, have been somewhat lacking in comparison to The Promise. That's about all I got for this week's episode of Arrow. As always, looking forward to the next one, and tomorrow night the plan is anyway to catch Vikings. So as always, feel free to leave comments, and hopefully I haven't really spoiled anything for you. Go watch the episode and see for yourself.